Okay, looks like my microphone is being read, and I'm streaming. Alright, welcome to the first mm, episode of the second season of the Henry George Daily Devotional. I don't know, we're reading Social Problems by Henry George now. This is with the Georgism Discord server. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. Matthew. That's the book of Matthew in the Bible. Note, this book was written in New York in 1883, which will explain references made in its pages to time and place. My endeavor has been to present the momentous social problems of our time, unencumbered by technicalities, and without that abstract reasoning which some of the principles of political economy require for thorough explanation. I've spoken in this book of some points not touched upon, or but lightly touched upon, in progress and poverty. But there are other points as to which I think it would be worth the while of those who may be interested by this book to read that. Yes, everyone go read Progress and Poverty. If only there were a podcast or a YouTube series where you could do that. Let's look at our contents. There's our contents. You know, I don't really like the. There's probably a view. We got 22 chapters and an appendix. Hmm. Can I download this? Yes, of course. And then we can fit width is pretty good. I don't know. All right. Social problems. Hmm. Hmm. Social anxiety. Social problems, chapter 1. The increasing importance of social questions. There come moments in our lives that summon all our powers, when we feel that, casting away illusions, we must decide and act with our utmost intelligence and energy. So in the lives of peoples come periods specially calling for earnestness and intelligence. We seem to have entered one of these periods. Over and again have nations and civilizations been confronted with problems which, like the riddle of the Sphinx, not to answer was to be destroyed. But never before have problems so vast and intricate been presented. This is not strange. That the closing years of this century must bring up momentous social questions follows from the material and intellectual progress that has marked its course. There's always something that pushes you to your limits. Well, I don't know about limits. There's always something that's the hardest thing you did, a little by definition. Between the development of society and the development of species, there's a close analogy. Somebody's been underlining. In the lowest forms of animal life, there is little difference of parts. Both wants and powers are few and simple. Movement seems automatic, and instincts are scarcely distinguishable from those of the vegetable. So homogeneous are some of these living things that if cut in pieces, each piece still lives. But as life rises into higher manifestations, simplicity gives way to complexity. The parts develop into organs having separate functions and reciprocal relations. New wants and powers arise, and a greater and greater degree of intelligence is needed to secure food and avoid danger. Did fish, bird, or beast possess no higher intelligence than the polyp, nature could bring them forth only to die. This law that the increasing complexity and delicacy of organization, which give higher capacity and increased power, are accompanied by increased wants and dangers, and require therefore increased intelligence, runs through nature. In the ascending scale of life, at last comes man, the most highly and delicately organized of animals. Yet not only do his higher powers require for their use a higher intelligence than exists in other animals, but without higher intelligence he could not live. His skin is too thin, his nails too brittle. He is too poorly adapted for running, climbing, swimming, or burrowing. Were he not gifted with intelligence greater than that of any beast, he would perish from cold, starve from inability to get food, or be exterminated by animals better equipped for the struggle in which brute instinct suffices. In man, however, the intelligence which increases all through nature's rising scale passes at one bound into an intelligence so superior that the difference seems of kind rather than degree. In him that narrow and seemingly unconscious intelligence that we call instinct becomes conscious reason, and the godlike power of adaptation and invention makes feeble man nature's king. But with man the ascending line stops. Animal life assumes no higher form, nor can we affirm that, in all his generations, man as an animal has a whit improved. But progression in another line begins. Where the development of species ends, social development commences, and that advance of society we call civilization. So increases human powers that between savage and civilized man there is a gulf so vast as to suggest the gulf between the highly organized animal and the oyster glued to the rocks. And with every advance upon this line, new vistas open, when we try to think what knowledge and power progressive civilization may give to the men of the future, imagination fails. In this progression which begins with man, as in that which leads up to him, the same law holds. Each advance makes a demand for higher and higher intelligence. With the beginnings of society arises the need for social intelligence, for that consensus of individual intelligence which forms a public opinion, a public conscience, a public will, and is manifested in law, institutions, and administration. Seems like a very roundabout way of getting at whatever he's getting at. But all right, the social condition of man as animal, transcending animal. I guess that's where we're beginning. Yes. As society develops, a higher and higher degree of this social intelligence is required, for the relation of individuals to each other becomes more intimate and important, and the increasing complexity of the social organization brings liability to new dangers. Excuse me. I wonder if George had in mind the difficulties arising from a family whose husband and wife divorced and the two kids live on opposite sides of the country, and figuring out where they should all have Christmas together and who wants to actually be around one another. Good thing I'm such a smart human that I can successfully, well, remains to be seen, navigate these socially treacherous waters of Christmas celebration. I'm sure that's what George was talking about. Did I finish the sentence? For the relation of industries more important, the increase brings liability to new dangers. Yes. In the rude beginning, each family produces its own food, makes its own clothes, builds its own house, and when it moves, furnishes its own transportation. Compare with this independence the intricate interdependence of the denizens of a modern city. They may supply themselves with greater certainty and a much greater variety and abundance than the savage, but it is by the cooperation of thousands. Even the water they drink and the artificial light they use are brought to them by elaborate machinery, requiring the constant labor and watchfulness of many men. They may travel at a speed incredible to the savage, but in doing so resign life and limb to the care of others. A broken rail, a drunken engineer, a careless switchman may hurl them to eternity. And the power of, yeah, I was thinking about this, you know, because I was in a motor vehicle traveling along the Southern California freeways, and there were a number of other cars zipping past us, cutting across lanes, and it's just every time I drive, which is, almost every day, it's so. I mean, I made a really big driving error last weekend. I just I was parked and I just pulled out in front of somebody, and they had to slam on their brakes and they honked, understandably. Uh, it's this weird, yeah, I don't know. That's Cars are not wholly bad. I don't think that. But anyway, they don't seem the best for so many of our purposes. Okay. Um so we read about how the switchman may hurl us to eternity, and the power of applying labor to the satisfaction of desire passes in the same way beyond the direct control of the individual. This is very related to men seek to satisfy their desires with the least exertion. The laborer becomes but part of a great machine, which may at any time be paralyzed by causes beyond his power or even his foresight. Thus does the well-being of each become more and more dependent upon the well-being of all, the individual more and more subordinate to society. George, throughout his writing, always uses like the male pronouns. Of course, he was writing in 1883, this book. Uh, I'm not. Every time I read it, his or his foresight, his power. I feel this slight embarrassment, or I don't know. It's like, oh, this is sexist, but it's old, and so it's not such a big deal. And then there's this little piece of me that's like, oh, the economy of language is kind of nice that we're not having to say by causes beyond his or her power, or even his or her foresight, or one's power or one's foresight. I don't know, I just wanted to share with you my internal struggle over this gendered language from 130 years ago. 145-ish years ago. What is it? 2024 minus 1883. 141 years. I could have. It's just scary doing math in front of people. The highly civilized. Okay, and so come. Wait. Yes, his or her power, even his or her foresight. Thus does the well-being of each become more and more dependent upon the well-being of all, the individual more and more subordinate to society. and so come new dangers. The rude society resembles the creatures that, though cut into pieces, will live. The highly civilized society is like a highly organized animal. A stab in a vital part, the suppression of a single function, is death. A savage village may be burned and its people driven off, but used to direct recourse to nature, they can maintain themselves. Highly civilized man, however, accustomed to capital, to machinery, to the minute division of labor, becomes helpless when suddenly deprived of these and thrown upon nature. Under the factory, now we're getting somewhere. Under the factory system, some 60 persons, with the aid of much costly machinery, cooperate to the making of a pair of shoes. But of the 60, not one could make a whole shoe. This is the tendency in all branches of production. Yeah, I think modern economists, one of them got all famous because he talked about no one knows how to make a pencil or something. Economist, no one can make a pencil. Okay, yeah, it's Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman. Not a single person in the world can make a pencil. I suspect George wasn't the first person to make this observation either. However, I would argue that it has sort of popped up in the brain of many different humans, not from directly reading it or hearing it from someone else, for whatever that's worth. This is the tendency in all branches of production, even in agriculture. How many farmers of the new generation can use the flail? How many farmers' wives can now make a coat from the wool? Yeah, I was just talking to my mom about how does how do they make threads from cotton? It's just crazy to me. I don't like you give me a couple balls of cotton and you're like, "All right, not, you know, yeah, make clothing from this cotton." I Magnets, how do they work? Many of our farmers do not even make their own butter or raise their own vegetables. There is an enormous gain in productive power from this division of labor, which assigns to the individual the production of but a few of of the things, or even but a small part of one of the things he needs. He needs and makes each dependent upon others with whom he never comes in contact, but the social organization becomes more sensitive. A primitive village community may pursue the even tenor of its life without feeling disasters which overtake other villages but a few miles off. But in the closely knit civilization to which we have attained, a war, a scarcity, a commercial crisis in one hemisphere produces powerful effects in the other, while shocks and jars from which a primitive community easily recovers would to a highly civilized community mean wreck. We definitely have gotten even more globalized than in George's time, and I honestly think this is one of the uh not exactly misconceptions, but one of the reasons why it seems like a lot of what George's predictions of doom and gloom didn't quite come. I think it's because the poverty that has arisen alongside of a lot of the U.S.'s progress is in other countries. Uh, yes, the land is really expensive in New York City, much more so than the middle of Montana, but land in the middle of Montana is much more valuable than land in the middle of Africa or middle of nowhere China, I think. I sure think. Um, And I think globalization and, well, I was going to start listing things that enable globalization, but globalization has linked all land much more closer together. And it becomes hard for us in the good land for us to see a lot of that poverty. There's still plenty of nearby poverty that's also hard for us to see because we drive in our cars from nice place to nice place, island of wealth to island of wealth. But it's so funny, there was a bunch of traffic on the freeway, insert rant about traffic here, that driving back from UCLA for my dad's medical treatment, state of the art, super expensive medical treatment at UCLA, one of the greatest medical institutions on this planet in all time. We took the freeway back. Of course, tons and tons of traffic. So we thought, why not just get off and take this side road? And suddenly, for the like 10 miles near my house that I zip past on the freeway every day, I'm passing through all these neighborhoods that are not beautiful, do not have well landscaped, regularly irrigated greenery surrounding the houses. And it's just strip mall after strip mall. It's even like hard, yeah. Uh, but nonetheless, those strip malls are still, in many ways, pretty wealthy, pretty glorious compared to rural Mexico. All right. Anyway, um, George is back to talking about our civilized community. How? Okay. So this is just the whole chapter. And the thing is, this is not searchable. Is it? No, that's kind of a bummer. I can't highlight, I can't search. But we have page numbers. Hmm. Well, I think this might conclude my first reading of Social Problems. We did not make it through our chapter, but that's okay. I will be back. All right. See ya. Social problems. Um, hmm. What form? I don't know. Maybe I should try a different time of day. I want to read this, so I might as well record myself while I read this. But what would be more effective with sharing these thoughts